All right, excellent. Here we go. Hello, everyone. I am Chika Odua. I'm so happy to be here with you all on day two of this edition, the 14th edition of the European Development Days. And at this forum, we've all been talking about one thing, one very important topic, and that is the Green Deal for a Sustainable Future. I am actually joining you all from Nigeria in West Africa. It's a beautiful day, and I have the pleasure of moderating what will be a fascinating conversation. We're going to be talking about none other than nature. Yes, nature. We're talking about greenness. We're talking about air and space and land, nature. We're going to talk about how nature-based solutions can actually help us to solve the biggest problems, some of the most pressing problems that we're facing in humanity. Yes, that's right. We're going to talk about how we can use nature to help us with things like climate change mitigation, climate adaptation, disaster risk reduction, what's called DRR, and also environmental management. So it's a really, really big topic. I know we've got a lot of information to cover. So we're going to do the best that we can to try to make sure that we can present the information in a way that is digestible to everyone who is watching. To help us do that, we're actually going to do a really cool thing. We're going to have a graphic artist who is watching this session right now, and throughout the conversation, which is about 50 minutes long, this graphic artist is actually going to be creating art around what we're talking about. He's going to capture some of the key points, some of the key phrases that our amazing speakers are going to present to us. So that's going to help us really and capture by pictures and graphics what will be said. So stick around. You can see a bit of a preview here. It's our natural solutions for climate change only. So this graphic artist is going to be working throughout the session. And at the very end of the session, we hope to be able to present to you the final illustration. So you don't want to miss it. Stay with us through the very, very end. All right, so to get things kicked off here, we're gonna have a question. Actually, I wanna pose a question to the audience. Yes, I've got a question for you, everyone who is watching, and yes, I want you to answer my question. So how do you answer the question? Well, we're actually going to be using a very cool interactive tool called Slido. You just log in, and with Slido, you can present your opinions, you can ask questions to our speakers. So just make sure that you're very active on this forum. So let's go ahead and show the very first question that we have for our audience. Let's put that question up on the screen. All right, so do you consider natural solutions a win-win solution? You've got your options there, option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4. So we're going to give you about 4 minutes to answer this question. So put your thinking caps on, all right? Do you consider natural solutions as a win-win option? Just go ahead and give it your best shot. So in the meantime, while you guys are answering that question, let me introduce our distinguished panelists. We've got 4 fascinating people joining us for this conversation. We've got Mami Mituzori, Special Representatives of the Secretary General for DDR and head of DRR. So she's going to give us so much information that's going to specifically speak about UN missions and policies towards this very important topic that we're talking about with seascapes and climate change and mitigation. Then we've got joining us is Mr. Ritesh Kumar. He's joining us as the Director of Wetlands International South Asia Branch. So thank you so much for joining us, sir. And then we've got all the way from Kenya, we've got an environmental conservationist. She is an ED representative actually in Kenya, in East Africa, and that is Miss Joanne Tonwi. Thank you so much for being with us, Joanne. And last but not least, we've got Alexander HADZHIIVANOV, and he actually is an economic specialist on the green sector. So he's going to be able to break down some of the ways that we can finance some of these amazing ideas that we're going to be presenting throughout this conversation. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. And I actually want to start with the first question directed towards Mami. My first question to you is, what do natural-based solutions actually look like? You know, this is a very highfalutin, high-concept word. It's also a very academic word. If you think about it, natural-based solutions. Can you just break down exactly what that looks like when we say natural-based solutions. Are we talking about natural toothpaste? Are we talking about natural laundry soap? Just, really break it down for us and also talk about how we can use natural-based solutions in various ways to solve various problems. Mami?
Thank you very much, Chika, and thank you for your question. So let me start to try to answer your question by saying, what's happening between us, the humans, and the nature. So we would need to be blind not to see that our planet is on its knees. The climate emergency, the loss of biodiversity, pollution of the air and oceans, ill-considered urban expansion, more and more extreme weather events, destruction of the environment, desertification, drought, the loss of wetlands. It's a long and tragic list. And none of these situations have occurred by accident. They are the result of our unsustainable encroachment on the nature and the destruction of protective ecosystems. Poor stewardship of the planet is affecting the well-being of 3.2 billion people right now, and every year we lose ecosystem services worth more than 10% of the global economic output. Now, in 2015, when UN member states adopted the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, DRR, they recognized the decline of ecosystems and the need to protect them as an essential part of reducing disaster risk and building a resilient future. And in recent years, we are hearing more and more about nature and nature-based solutions to our problems. So one might think that they are something new, but actually, nature-based solutions have been part of our interacting sustainably and safely with their environment for thousands of years. Let us just think of the extraordinary use of the Nile Delta annual floods to grow and sustain the ancient empire of Egypt, turning risk into opportunity. Nature-based solutions can often be relatively cheap, effective, and scalable, and so it is a wonder that the global community, the business community, policymakers, and political leaders have not been thinking more about nature, not only to protect them, but to use them for solving our issues. Nature-based solutions are designed to remedy the problems of poor land management, unsustainable use of natural resources, and degrading ecosystems. There is little doubt that nature-based solutions for disaster risk reduction should be seen as a cost-effective and no-regrets win-win prevention component in the national or local strategy for disaster risk reductions for all countries. NBS nature-based solutions encompass many different approaches, including ecosystem-based adaptation and mitigation, eco-disaster risk reduction, and green infrastructure, among others. We hear a lot about using mangroves to stabilize shorelines and protect against storm surges, but nature-based solutions are about so much more. There is good evidence that forest and vegetation management can reduce a variety of hazards, notably wildfires, soil erosion, and flooding. Urban ecosystem and green infrastructure designs, such as green rooftops, permeable sidewalks, and constructed wetlands, are effective for attenuating urban flooding, pollution, and heat waves. So you can see that nature is not only about the rural, but about the urban as well. There is also good evidence that maintained mountain ecosystems can reduce landslides, and we know of the role that inland wetlands can play in reducing flooding. These are just some of the solutions explored in detail in the new Words into Action guide, which is titled Nature-Based Solutions for Disaster Risk Reduction. It is my great pleasure to launch this today here. And we are very grateful for and recognize the leadership of UNEP as well as the Partnership for Environment and Disaster Risk Reduction in steering the process, ensuring that this guidance about using nature reflects best practices. We acknowledge the inputs of hundreds of stakeholders who are actually working with nature every day in ensuring it is relevant and realistic. As do other guides in the Words into Action series that we produce, this one unpacks the Sendai Framework policy guidance and drills down into the how-to. It draws extensively from both expert knowledge and practitioners' experience. We trust that this guide will be extremely useful and relevant for national and local governments, national disaster management agencies, DRR practitioners, policymakers, trainers, and importantly, community workers. The next 10 years have been designated by the Secretary General as the decade of action. It is clear that when it comes to taking action to tackle some of the world's biggest risks, nature is one of our strongest allies. So let us strengthen our alliance with nature for a safe, healthy, and resilient future for all. Back to you, Chika.
Thank you so much. One phrase that you said that really caught my attention at the very beginning, you said that the world, nature, is actually on its knees. I think that's a very powerful representation of the reality that some people, unfortunately, they still haven't grasped the desperation of where we are, the urgency of where we are. So thank you for really trying to put it out there. Also, you mentioned the words into action policy briefing, and I was able to get a sneak peek, and I'm looking at it now. It's chock full of very helpful information that I think can be applied across the entire world, from the global north to the global south, nature-based solutions for disaster risk reduction. So we're very excited that you were able to launch that today, Mami.
Thank you.
All right, so let's now go to the poll that we put forth in the very beginning. Let's see the results of that. It was, do you consider natural solutions as a win-win option? And you've got 4 options there. And let's see the final answer. Do we have any responses there, any feedback? Some of these responses are actually very quite funny. Number 3 is very quite funny. It says no, that they're useless. So it was, yes, they counter environmental degradation and biodiversity loss, or they can be used as a key for climate change mitigation and adaptation. And then number 3, yes, they reduce the risk of disaster. So really, the first 3 options were the best options to choose from. And so, guys, don't be shy. Everyone who's watching, make sure you're participating in the forum, because we're actually going to have a second poll question I'm going to throw to you. But first, I want to go to Mr. Ritesh. Let's talk about your work in India, sir, where you are implementing a project to upscale community resilience through DRR. Can you talk a little bit more about this project and what you're hoping to achieve with it?
Thank you. Thank you for this invitation. The project in India is actually an effort to build disaster risk resilience in communities on the coastline of Odisha, which is frequently ravished by cyclones. And we are trying to build nature at the heart of disaster risk reduction, which means looking into the local ecosystems, the mangroves, the estuaries, the wetlands, and how their rejuvenation and revival can be built and can help sustain their livelihoods and reduce the risks that the communities face. But this is almost a decade-long intervention. And I would also like to share some of the experiences that we had thus far. One is, getting a shared understanding between disaster risk reduction and people who work on ecosystem management, people like us, is very critical. For example, disaster risk reduction inherently is an anthropogenic concept, looks at humans. So often I come to hear about situations like flood is a hazard, and we need to do something about it. Rarely, we ask this question that, where does this flood come from? Is this a natural property of the ecosystem? So, for example, in the deltaic landscape that I work in, or in several other parts, without floods, the sediments or the movement of nutrients do not happen. Right? A delta is built around floods. So if you don't get this core understanding, we'll end up fighting the natural properties of the ecosystem. And therein, the gelling of the language is pretty important. It's akin to saying you're standing in your bathroom and you're trying to stay dry. The area which are supposed to be wet, the areas that are supposed to receive rain, they need to, and we don't need to fight nature. But we need to understand that development which is ill-informed is the source of risk here. And then we need to influence our developmental choices. Secondly, what we as ecosystem managers we have learned over a period of time, that resilience building is a slow process. Projects after projects, or a project-centric approach trying to deliver something or 3 years or 5 years is not going to help unless it is owned by the political and planning processes. So it is going to be a slow incremental change, and communities need to shape their developmental agendas around resilience building to deliver some kind of an impact. And the lesson that we have learned is be patient. At the same time, when there is a disaster, which we also need to recognize that when there is an event, humanitarian efforts need to be prioritized. We can inform, but yes, in the case of a massive flood or a cyclone, humans need to be addressed first. And in those circumstances, a well-informed rejuvenation, a well-informed community which works on relief and rehabilitation can give pro-nature solutions. So these are different dimensions, and I'm still a student of this area, trying to learn my tricks on implementing a community-centric resilience. But the pathway, the entry of resilience building will essentially be around developmental issues. If people don't have food on their plate, it is very hard to convince that you will build a mangrove or you will build a sustainable wetland system and then ensure the resilience building. But at the same time, if we are able to establish and build on the linkages that nature degradation has with risk building, I think there are workable solutions that can be done. So this was all that I wanted to share, and
Yes.
happy to respond at a later stage. Thanks.
Excellent, Ritesh. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you mentioned that it's kind of difficult to convince people who are trying to feed themselves hand to mouth that this matters, because sometimes these conversations tend to kind of fly over the heads of millions of people, understandably, people who are just still living on whether it's $5 a day or $1 a day. Sometimes these conversations don't quite hit the grassroots. So it's very difficult to get that. So that's why I want to take this now over to our friend from Kenya, Joanne. How do you get this message to the grassroots? Please tell us all about what you've been doing in community organizing to take this broad topic. We're here at the EDD talking high-level policy, but how do you now transfer this message to the people at the grassroots, and what are you doing in that arena?
Thank you so much. And I would like, first of all, to pass my deepest gratitudes to the European Development Days for granting me this opportunity to be here at this high-level panel today. My name is Joanne Tonui. I am a Kenyan, and I am very passionate about restoration of ecosystems. And also, I strive to inspire many other young Africans to do the same in their countries, because if you find that 72.49% of people in Kenya live in the rural areas, and over 3.4 billion people in Africa live in rural areas, and they all depend on natural resources such as rivers, lakes for livelihoods. And if these resources are depleted, these people, their lives are at stake. Therefore, I have grown up knowing that seeing rivers as main source of water in my community. And growing up, I've faced the challenges of, first of all, being a woman, having to travel for long distances to find water for the household. And I thought I can do something for this. And in my community, we have rivers, we have springs, but they are facing a lot of distractions and degradation due to increasing rate of agricultural practices that are being practiced among the communities. And even the growing population is depleting these resources because of high demand for water. However, the solutions are in the community. We, the community, have the solutions for our depleted natural resources. So we started an initiative to promote restoration of rivers and springs in my community by engaging the community and having them understand the importance of planting the suitable trees along the rivers and suitable trees along the springs, while removing the exotic trees such as eucalyptus. You find that majority of people are planting eucalyptus and other exotic trees, or they are unsustainably utilizing the existing natural resources. But they are not finding that whatever they are doing is actually harmful to the natural resources. However, they are doing it because they want to have quick economic benefit. But now convincing them to understand the importance of conserving these natural resources is really important. And convincing them is one of the difficult, as I can admit, it's very difficult to convince the community to change their ways. But we have to bring in aspects of what are the other ways that we can engage them that they can earn an economic impact, benefit from other sustainable ways which are not harmful to the natural resources. And that is why we are promoting what we call the agroforestry along the rivers, where you inform the community or you educate them about planting indigenous trees, and beneath the indigenous trees they can plant or they can grow grass, which they can use to feed their animal or their cattle, or they can also introduce beekeeping, which is also one of the most sustainable ways of using of promoting natural resources. We also have bamboo. Bamboo, I know bamboo have been said to be one of the best suitable plants to plant along the river banks because of its benefits in reducing soil erosion, benefits in reducing floods and all that. However, the community do not understand the economic benefits of bamboo also. So my team and I, we are trying to educate the community on economic benefits of bamboo so that they can leave their ways of planting eucalyptus and other exotic trees and also move to other sustainable ways of utilizing the existing natural resources. The government have done policies, have set up policies that and laws that govern natural resources, for instance, not growing crops within the 30 meters of wetland area. However, if these policies are set above, going to the when you go to the ground or when you go to the community, things are totally different. Because the way I come from a community where people believe that land belongs to them, it doesn't. The land doesn't belong to the government. So if you set laws, and then when you go to the community, things are totally different. So the community has to be involved in setting up laws and policies that talks about natural resources, because it's them who benefit from these natural resources, and it's them who face the challenges when it comes to floodings and other impacts of climate change. Now, for instance, I can talk about an example where we were promoting, we were removing the exotic trees along the river banks, but we were not telling the community why we are doing this. Like telling them just remove the exotic trees because it's harmful to the natural resources. But now they were not getting why you are forcing them to remove this. But now telling them the best way they can do it is important, because it is them who understand that natural resource, and they have the best solutions for that natural resource. So I think it's really
So Joanne, what kind of, just to jump in there, what kind of resistance are you facing when trying to communicate these messages at the grassroots?
The resistance from the community. Because
Yes.
as I said, they believe that the land is theirs. So you cannot bring new laws and policies and then implement in their land without having to inform them about it. So the resistance is they have to know what exactly is being implemented. They have the solutions. They are the ones to give the solutions that they want to be implemented as well. And also they have to gain the economic benefit from that, because majority of them, they are using these water resources or natural resources for livelihoods and other economic benefits. So involving them, that sustainable activity that you're introducing to the community has to also have a benefit income in the community.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'd like to bring in Alexander to talk about money for us. You heard that Joanne has mentioned some of the projects, such as planting bamboo by the riversides. Alex, can you talk about what financial institutions can do to invest these types of projects to make sure that people actually have the financial support to implement natural-based solutions at the grassroots level, in the forest, along riverbanks, in the villages all across the world?
Yes, thank you, Chika. Also, thank you for this opportunity to speak at this distinguished event with so many of excellent speakers. And if to answer shortly on your question, actually, it definitely makes sense for private businesses and for financial institutions to finance nature-based solutions, simply because it makes a common economic sense for them, especially if they're after longer-term business opportunities. But I would point here at the excellent report published by Professor Dasgupta and provided for the UK government, The Economics of Biodiversity, where he rightly stresses that all of us, we are collectively part of nature, and our economies or economic activities rely on nature for survival. So it's a matter actually of sustainable growth, of economic survival, to invest and aim for nature positive solutions. If we can think about nature as a capital asset, where stocks of natural resources can be considered stocks of natural capital, ultimately generating wealth and well-being in the same way as human capital does, then depreciation of any capital assets poses significant risk to both private businesses as well as to financial institutions which are financing them. And then losing the value of these nature capital assets obviously affects the economic health of the businesses as well. Now, if to point at, if we don't respect these rules and continue with the business as usual, leading to degradation of nature, loss of biodiversity, we have in our region, in Central Asia, a very warning example of misguided economic policies and investment decisions. And this is the RLC, which is probably the worst ever human-made environmental disaster. So what we have seen there is complete annihilation of all economic activities in the area of former RLC. So tourism gone, fisheries gone, agricultural production gone, services gone, with enormous losses of health, well-being, and even lives of people. So these are maybe trillions of losses as a result of misguided investment decisions, where we didn't take care about nature, and actually this resulted in economic losses. Now, in order to prevent this, our bank from the very inception, and we are celebrating our 30th birthday this year, introduced very strict environmental and social policies, effectively using the best of knowledge on environmental science, and implement this as compliance policies in our investments. But the matter of urgency is that we need to go beyond compliance. We need to scale up and look for nature-positive solutions, for projects which actually have a biodiversity gain. And our bank has examples of such initiatives and projects. I would refer here to the Northern Dimension Environmental Partnership, which was set up a couple of years ago, following recommendations of the Environmental Convention in Helsinki for Baltic Sea. You know, thanks to discharge of untreated wastewater into Baltic Sea, the seawater was polluted with huge quantities of phosphorus, nitrogen, and other pollutants, and that actually facilitated the growth of algae, the sea snot, which is actually slime-like substance which covers the sea surface and literally exterminates all the marine life, with all the consequences for fisheries, for tourism, and associated economic activities in the region. So thanks to our Northern Dimension Environmental Partnership initiative, managed by EBRD, we have invested in 23 large-size wastewater treatment plants with additional capacity of treating wastewater of 2 million cubic meters per day, and eliminating over 13,000 of tons of phosphorus and nitrogen from the seawater. And the results can be seen, visible even from satellite images. So there are good examples, there are good activities, but we need to do more. And I would like also to say that our bank is one of the founding members of the Task Force for Nature-related Risk Financial Disclosure, TNFD, where we developed together with our peers and partners standards and provisions for disclosure, reporting, and mitigating actions of nature-related risks for financial institutions. And maybe to say a bit more, we also signed the sustainable principles for blue economy last year, and we are looking forward actually for replicating our experience in other parts of our region where EBRD invests and operate. But I think what is important is collaboration and partnerships between businesses, local communities, and financial institutions, because the issue of this unabated degradation of nature and ecosystems and loss of biodiversity is a matter of urgency. And with the climate change, we're just seeing this at accelerating rate. So it's a matter of economic survival to do something and diverse the trend and guide our businesses for adopting of more sustainable business models.
Wow, that's very fascinating. Thank you so much. I could listen to you all day because this is a topic that really intrigues me. I have so many more questions, but not enough time. So thank you very much for that. So now I actually want to go back to the second poll. I've been told by the technicians that it takes just a second for the question to show up. So let's just bear with that. So can we put up the second poll question that we have for our audience? Also, feel free to respond to this poll. There's a Q&A chat box, so just present your answers there as well if you're not able to actually select. So there it is. Do you consider natural solutions as a win-win option? Actually, nope, that's not the second one, guys. That's the first one. Can we put up the second question? Let's bring up the second question for our audience. The question should be about how to scale up natural solutions. Excellent. Okay, that's still the first question, and maybe I'll give you guys a second to take care of that, and then we'll come back to the second poll. Meanwhile, I do have a question to ask all of our audience, all of our speakers. I want you guys to really put forward a call to action at this point. What can the average person do? Like just right now to begin, what can the average person do to invest in natural-based solutions? Mammy, I'd like to start with you. Just really bring it down to the level that anyone can really participate in. What can someone do to invest in their daily life in natural-based solutions? Let's start with Mammy.
Chika, I would like to encourage everyone in the communities to look at their surrounding and see what is happening in their area in terms of development, in terms of ecosystem, in terms of disaster risk reduction. Now, we heard from Rowan that there's a resistance from communities about their land used in a way that people think it's important. But it's actually not others who are imposing this on you. It is your choice, but your choice needs to be an informed choice, and it has to be a win-win solution. Now, we know of many good projects where nature has been used to both help people have income, but also protect their surroundings and lead to development. And I would also like to mention, listening to Alexander, that I think it's important that all of us understand that a lot of developed countries, like including my own, Japan, we went through a tremendous growth in the 1960s and 70s, but at the back of that, there was air pollution, there was river pollution, and there were horrific diseases related to these pollutions. People died, people were disfigured. And so there cannot be a trade-off between destroying the nature and destroying people's lives and development. We need to find a way where development is sustainable, as the Sustainable Development Goals tell us. And so I think, let us start educating ourselves more about what happened in the developed countries, and let's not repeat the same thing. I am all for sustainable development for everybody, especially the most marginalized in the most at-risk countries. But in order to make that happen, we need to all collectively look back at what happened in the history when we were destroying nature and when development was sustainable. Let's not make the same mistake. This is what I would like to encourage and would like to talk about with every member of those communities, so that we can start being allies of nature. Back to you.
Excellent. What a wonderful call to nature and a call to action as well. Ritesh, let's talk about, let's say, the average family in the mangroves along the coastline of India. What can the average family that's relying on the wetlands for their livelihood, how can they invest in natural-based solutions?
Thank you. An important thing to realize that nature benefits everyone. There is, be it poor, be it rich, you can't imagine life without nature. Think of the water that you drink, think about the food that you eat, whether you are poor, whether you are developed, underdeveloped. So there is some sort of a romanticized view of, nature-based solutions being working for marginal communities. I think everyone needs to take a step. So to answer your question, what does the community do is to own up, own the nature. Live with nature and ensure that nature is protected as an asset they would do to their economic assets. So the trees, the rivers, the streams, the wetlands, the mangroves, air, water, everything is an asset. And we are custodians to those assets. Our responsibility is to hand over these assets in good condition to our future generations. So as custodians, let us act as good stewards and ensure that nature is respected in its possible way. And then we learn about nature, talk about nature, and be informed about nature when we make different development choices. Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you. And Alex, what about you? What can the average person do to begin to invest in natural-based solutions? And when I talk about average person, I want you to talk about someone who's perhaps on the higher end of the socio-economic spectrum than someone who's perhaps a bit more average.
Well, Mami actually has answered it very nicely. But I would like to refer here also to what Joan has mentioned in her previous statement. I do completely understand the challenges which local communities or smaller businesses are facing with regards to adoption new and more sustainable ways of their business or daily life. And I see a lot of parallels with the challenges we faced some 15, 20 years ago when we started to talk about climate change. Well, in order to make people change or adopt new models of businesses or behavior, they will need to understand the benefits of doing so. They will need to understand the consequences of what could happen if they don't change these ways. And obviously, they will need to know how to convert the high-level principles into very practical action for themselves or for their business. And that is why when we started to invest or to look for investment opportunities on energy efficiency, climate change some 15 years ago, started to systematically screen projects for green investments. We put a lot of emphasis of how we structure these products and include components of technical assistance and capacity building. Because if people will understand, if they will know how to do it, they will do it. My personal experience, let's say, with interacting with private businesses is that business is keen to go an extra mile if they understand the rationale behind, if they see the value. And clearly nowadays, there is a value of becoming more nature-friendly, more environmentally friendly, greener, because this is what customers are looking for. This is what community are looking for, because they understand the benefits of so. But we need to be practical and provide them with practical tools and actions which they can adopt themselves.
Excellent. And Joanne, what about you? What can the average person do to really invest in natural-based solutions?
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, in a community, you look around you. What is the natural resource that is near you, and what are the needs for that community? Are they using that? Are they practicing farming, or is it any other activity that earns them economic benefits? And once you consider that, how best now can this community tap into this existing natural resource in a more sustainable way, which will not affect their economic impact, and also will not harm the existing natural resource? And then combining the two with the community and with the help of the scientific knowledge and the policies and laws, I believe we are able to come up with a solution, a long-lasting solution that will help in protection of these natural resources. Because I believe sometimes when we have meetings and forums in the community, we tend to listen to stories from old people who tell us how the rivers and springs are holy places that used to be honored so much in the 100 years ago. But right now it has changed. Why? It's because of the growing demand for food, growing demand for water, and the growing population. But now there is a knowledge gap where the growing generation is lacking in terms of how best can we tap into these existing natural resources without having to harm it or without having to destroy it. And also we are able to earn an income from this natural resource. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We're so lucky to have two people at the grassroots here with us. I mean, it's Joanne and Ritesh. So I'm curious, Joanne and Ritesh, from listening to each other's experiences, are there any links, any alliances, any similarities between what you guys are dealing with? So Ritesh, anything that Joanne said that you think resonates with what you're facing at the wetlands?
Okay, so I think we are speaking with a synonymous voice. We have to understand communities and their situations to take ahead the nature's language. We and our role as civil society or individual practitioners is more often enabling nature. And I think Joanne is also conveying this. But what an important point that Joanne is highlighting is the role of political economy, the way we align our rights, privileges, ownerships, the role of government. That also has to be factored in and well aligned to deliver a sustainable solution for development as well as protecting nature.
Excellent. And Joanne, what about you? Did anything that Ritesh mentioned with working along the wetlands, the mangroves, the coastal regions, does that resonate with your community as well? Or are you perhaps furthermore inland?
Yeah, I think it resonates well because the mangroves and the coast works well with the coastal areas. And also what we are doing is what works well with the wetlands areas, like the growing of bamboo and indigenous trees, and as well as engaging the communities in different setups. I mean, identifying the needs for the communities first before implementing an activity.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I have a burning question to ask Mami, but first I want to see if the second poll is available. Can we bring that up on the screen? Is that working now, the second poll? If not, I'll just ask the question I have for Mami. Let's see if we can give it another shot. Poll number 2. Let's see if we can get that up. I'm told that there's a little bit of a delay, so let's just wait a bit. Excellent. There we go. So how to scale natural solutions up. You've got 4 options. Take a look at that. Put on your thinking caps. What I want to encourage you to do is, based on what our 4 speakers have presented today, what do you think? What do you think is the best action plan moving forward to scale up these natural solutions? 1, 2, 3, 4. If you can't actually click, you can also respond on the side. So be sure to do that. Again, we're going to give you about 4 minutes to answer that. And in the meantime, the question that I have for Mami, I'm always very interested in the global north and the global south. I mean, for myself, raised in the United States, now I'm living and working in Africa, and I see a huge difference in terms of conversations around nature and how to use nature in our everyday environment to help us. So do you find that there's a different type of conversation between the global north and the south with how these issues are discussed and how they're even manifested?
Yes, thank you. That's a very important question, Chika, isn't it? I do feel that there might be some differences, that in the global north, because we've gone through this total destruction of nature, and we know that nature and economic development cannot be two things, trade-offs. We're trying to look at nature in a different way. And in the global south, I think that it's seen sometimes almost as a luxury to think nature first. And that is very understandable. But so that I think is a difference. But I do also feel that there's a common thread. So when you look at what comes out from the communities, what comes out from indigenous knowledge, what comes out from traditional thinking, things like, Joanne was saying, there is a common thread that both in the global north and the global south, there is a community of people who understand the importance of nature as a sustainable, crucial element for our human development. So yes, there are differences, but at the end of the day, I do feel that there are a lot of common thread, and what we need to do right now is to bring up these voices so that these voices can be mainstreamed in our discussion on how we talk about nature. And one more group that I think is really, talking about in the same language is the youth. The youth of the global north and the youth of the global south are talking in the same language when it comes to nature.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Yes, bringing in the youth, because of course they're going to be the ones to implement these policies that we're making, right? And Alex, I can see that you're itching to get in there. So I want to hear your take on this, the global north and the global south. What difference do you see in terms of how nature-based solutions are approached in these two parts of the world?
Thank you, Chika. Well, frankly speaking, I think we have made a lot of mistakes in the global north, which could be good lessons learned for the global south. And on the other hand, when I travel myself and visit projects in Central Asia, in North Africa, etc., I do see fascinating nature-based solutions, which can be adopted, supported, scaled up. Name it, construction materials, local, nature-based, very low carbon footprint, organic agriculture, some very smart farming methods. And I think these solutions need a support and promotion because they are really coming up with centuries tested approach, which has proven to be successful and in line with nature objectives and protection of nature and biodiversity. So I see actually both ways, a lot of lessons learned and synergies for networking and doing things together.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So now let's go back to our second poll and see if we've got some results. The question was about scaling up. How can we scale up natural solutions? We had very interesting comments to that. It was 4 options for you. Let's see what our viewers had to say about how to scale up natural solutions. Can we bring it up on the screen? There we go. Let's see what our respondents said. We've got 60% of our viewers said all, 20% said the first one, fostering true systems of understanding. And then we've got 20% said we can scale up these solutions by promoting a multidisciplinary collaboration to redesign landscapes for future resilience. So excellent. I agree that all of these options are definitely useful for us moving forward. And on that note, I just want to thank my panelists. Wow, like I said, this is something that I'm personally very interested in. I find myself to be drawn towards topic about nature. I am a nature girl to the core, so this has been a very interesting conversation. And just to kind of piggyback what everyone said, Mami, you mentioned that we should not fight nature. We should be able to make sure that it's a win-win solution. That's a very great call to action. And Ritesh and Joanne, from what I heard from you two, you guys were saying, look at what your community is facing. what is the pressing challenge there? And just go from your local solution and then go global. And then Alex, thank you so much for talking about how the financial sector can really bring in their expertise and their finances and their dollars, because we really have to make sure that we have something substantial moving forward. Oftentimes we hear these great ideas, but not an actual way to bring it forward. And of course, we need currency to get these ideas going. So thank you so much. That was wonderful. I hope you guys had a great time. Any final words from any of you guys? Feel free.
One word: nature-based solutions don't happen naturally. We need to all work together and make it happen and scale it up. The second question is very important. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Excellent. And thank you so much for launching that call to action and the word to action plan. That's great. So in the beginning, if you all remember, I talked about a graphic designer who's going to be capturing this amazing conversation with an illustration. I'm being told it's not quite ready yet. The master is still at work. So that's going to be revealed in about 15 minutes here on the EDD platform. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much again to my panelists. It's such an honor to talk to you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, and back to the studio.
Thank you so much, Chika, for this very entertaining high-level panel indeed. What I took away from this panel, it's a bit of mixed feelings, to be perfectly honest with you. We had Mami Matsutori opening the session by painting a very clear picture, but a very sobering picture at the same time, if I can say so. I took away from what she was saying that the world today, our planet, it's on its knees. It's not on its knees because it's grateful, but because it's desperate. So I heard from her that the grand total of more than 3 billion people are currently affected by climate change and by the decline of global ecosystems. She called natural-based solutions a no-regret, a win-win solution. She also pointed out, and I think this is helpful for our session here today, that we're not merely talking about the rural areas, but that we have also urban within the scope. I also heard mangroves a couple of times, which is helpful because later on we'll have a lab debate also on the contributions of mangroves to people and to local communities. We then had Ritesh Kumar. I think he painted a very nice picture as well, or a very striking image, saying that there's no use to fight with nature. We should not we should not be standing in our bathroom underneath the shower and then thinking that we can avoid to get wet or that we want to stay dry. We should listen to nature and we should work together with nature rather than imposing our own thoughts and strategies. So we should go for a partnership with Mother Nature there as well. A couple of times, and this was helpful that you pointed that out, Chika, we heard about the difficulty saying in translating that to the grassroots, where the people are actually trying to cope with a couple of dollars per day, trying to feed themselves, trying to go on with their lives, and yet we are imposing some of those nature-based solutions. So it tells me we shouldn't be imposing them, we should work together with those local communities and trying to educate them that they perceive the value of those solutions for sure. I was a little bit sobered indeed by this fairly hard, but just a picture that Mazuri or Mami painted in the very beginning. I've seen a ray of hope when Joan blended into the discussions, because I think she really and truly embodies the local youth. So it was very helpful and hopeful for me to see that she, as a young leader for Kenya, that she appreciates the added value that nature-based solutions can bring. I also heard what she was saying, that being a young woman, she has to go literally to great lengths to collect water, but at the very same time, she was also speaking passionately and with a lot of convincing power about the added value of nature-based solutions. So that was a bit, I would say, a very good equilibrium that we hear from the youth themselves, that they become an ambassador for the value that nature-based solutions can bring indeed. So more than one ray of hope, I would say, from someone who understands the true hardships on the field and yet speaking so passionately about nature-based solutions, such as mangroves, such as bamboo, for instance. She also stressed more than once the importance of indeed both educating and mobilizing the local communities, so not just imposing those solutions, but explaining them, trying to raise awareness, trying to mobilize and actually engage and connect with the local communities such that they become our ambassadors. And the best way to do that, and then it was helpful to have the point of view of Alexander as, say, a financer or a business angel, is to show the value, is to show what's in it for them. And I also took what Alexander said on trying to think of natural assets as, say, being stocks. Because if you have that kind of financial mindset, in a blink of an eye, immediately you appreciate and you recognize that if we depreciate or amortize those stocks, that everyone along the value chain is starting to lose value indeed. So what I took from this high-level panel is that it's a win-win solution indeed. It's not a hollow slogan, but we need, and this was also something that Alexander stressed, we need cooperation, we need partnerships. Investing in nature-based solutions is a question of economic survival, so we are all implicated in that process. I also heard, and I think that was helpful for the audience as well, some very clear calls for actions, and what was the greater common denominator in what I heard about those actions is look around. Listen to nature, talk to your environment, and start acknowledging that we are all part of that very ecosystem. So we should listen, we should talk and interact with nature and with our local environments. We also, again, need to explain to the local actors what's in it for them, so that they appreciate the value for them, that they also understand the consequences if we choose not to invest, what will happen further down the line, so that if they see that bigger picture, that they understand what's in it for them. Then I'm also hopeful, because Alexander rightfully said that the businesses, if they appreciate the value, they will run the additional mile. Another important a fact I picked up was, I think it was Joan who said, the importance of storytellers. We used to listen to the older people and hear their stories and understand how it used to be. That tells me that today there's a need for a compelling narrative on the importance of nature-based solutions. So we should also reach out to those people who have the capacity to convey that message to the local authorities. And then by the very end, I heard again Mami talking about the 60s, the very large growth, and after that, indeed, the problems we've been facing, the pollution. I recall when I wore a younger man's clothes, the problems we were having with acid rain, with the ozone layer. It's a ray of light or of hope for me as well, because by the end of the road, we solved those problems. We took the scientific evidence at face value, we appreciated it, we faced the music, we implemented the policies, and we solved that problem. Now, needless to say, the challenges we are facing today are, I would say, an order of magnitude higher, but still, I think all of us need to believe in our own capacity to address those problems and to try to solve them. So my bottom line would be avoiding further degradation of ecosystems and integrating nature in the design of infrastructure and development projects. This is key. This is key and cost effective to achieve not only climate goals, but also targets related to Agenda 2030, biodiversity and disaster risk reduction. In the meantime, Chika, I am looking, I don't know whether the audience can see it, but I am looking at a very bright picture that this artist has cooked up. I would like to wrap up maybe with a picture or with an image as well. We started out by Mami saying the planet is on its knees because of desperation and because it is in a very poor health, so to speak. I think all of us, and this I heard also across the board in this panel, all of us should also be on our knees today, but out of respect for our own habitat and our ecosystems. So thank you all for joining this panel. Thank you all for tuning in. And we're now about, we can have a look at the graphics, so I'm happy to reveal what the artist has cooked up. I propose we all have a look at this. And it paints us indeed, it's a fairly digested picture here, but I appreciate what is shown here. Do you consider natural-based solutions as a win-win? I see the Slido coming in there. I see indeed people holding each other's hands, cooperating together. I see again also people sitting together and listening to stories, trying to convey the bigger message, the bigger picture, and explaining the value that we have for those different stakeholders involved. And then also indeed a clear takeaway of how we can encourage people to invest in nature-based solutions. So indeed, we have the hand of the artist here painting us, I think, a very beautiful picture of what has been a most interesting high-level panel. Thank you so much, Chika, and all the participants in our panel for bringing that to the attention of the EDD audience. Having said that, we do have a stand interview coming up. This is in another 6 to 7 minutes, so we'll have a short placeholder now, and at 10:30 sharp I have the opportunity to talk to some people to also, because we now in the panel, we touched upon the importance of investing in nature-based solutions. I will be talking to 2 experts who are also implicating in investing in financing science partnerships for green and sustainable innovation. So I'll be seeing you again on this stream in exactly 6 minutes and a half.